At 5:41 local time in the eastern approaches to the Gulf, the surface radar picture changes in an instant. Not gradually, not one contact at a time, but all at once. Screens that had been calm and stable only moments earlier begin filling with rapidly forming tracks. Bearings stack up, speeds jump, altitude data locks in. These are not aircraft, they are not ships, they are incoming weapons. The first assessment arrives within seconds, high-arc ballistic profiles, steep climbs, enormous energy. Almost immediately, a second layer appears beneath them, low-flying cruise weapons hugging the sea, partially hidden by curvature and surface clutter. The system starts counting before anyone even asks. 12, 27, 44, then higher still. By the time the number settles, there are 68 inbound tracks converging from multiple directions, launch points, and altitudes. It is a deliberate saturation pattern, timed and coordinated. On the bridge of the carrier at the center of the formation, no one needs to shout. The order is brief, procedural, almost calm. Condition 3. Set and man all key stations across the strike group. The response moves through the formation instantly. Destroyers tighten their spacing. A cruiser shifts slightly outward to widen the defensive arc. Every ship knows its position. Every system knows its job. On the flight deck, motion stops mid-step. Catapult crews freeze with hands still on steel. Weapons teams back away from armed aircraft. Elevators stop where they are. In seconds, the deck changes from launch platform to hardened objective. Below decks, there is no panic, only speed. Aegis systems move from watch mode to engagement logic. Threat libraries match profiles automatically. Fire control solutions begin calculating before a human hand touches a console. The ballistic weapons are climbing fast, driving toward the upper atmosphere. The cruise weapons stay low, some weaving slightly, some disappearing and reappearing in radar clutter as they skim the surface. The geometry matters. The spacing matters. Whoever launched them understands exactly how to make this difficult. Inside CIC, a watch officer calls it plainly. Multiple vectors, coordinated timing, a saturation attempt. No one answers. No one needs to. Everyone in the room already sees the same thing. This is not a probe. This is a serious test. Time to impact starts collapsing fast. 8 minutes. 7. Electronic warfare indicators flicker along the edge of the display. Brief spikes. Narrow band interference. Not enough to blind the group, just enough to complicate the picture and force the system to work harder. That, too, is intentional. On one destroyer, an operator watches 2 cruise tracks separate just enough to force a choice in engagement priority. On another console, a ballistic track appears to split into predicted debris clusters designed to overload intercept logic. This is not random pressure, it is choreography. The strike group answers the way it was built to answer, without rushing. No warning shots, no outward radio calls. Every inbound is treated as real. Every track is logged. Every second matters. Above the formation, combat air patrol aircraft adjust their orbits automatically. Not to engage, because there is no time for that, but to stay clear of the defensive fire corridors that are about to open. On the bridge, the captain watches the plot in silence. He has seen versions of this before. Not this many, not this dense. But the idea is familiar. An opponent betting that numbers can break discipline, that a dense wave can disrupt timing, that one leak is all it takes. Inside CIC, the display updates again. 68 confirmed, one voice says. Another follows right behind it. Time to first intercept window, 90 seconds. That is the moment when the air inside the ship seems to tighten. Not because anyone is afraid, but because what happens next cannot be taken back. Interceptors are about to leave the rails. The strike group cannot simply disengage. It cannot maneuver its way out of the geometry. It can only do what it was designed to do. The carrier continues on course, steady and unchanged, cutting through the water as if nothing has happened. But beneath that calm surface, steel, software, and training are aligning for the next phase. The clock keeps moving. 6 minutes, 5, and across every deck, every compartment, every console, the same unspoken understanding settles in. If the system slips even once, the carrier takes the blow. At 5:44 local time, the geometry fully locks in. The ballistic threats are now in mid-course. Still climbing, their energy signatures surging as they move through thinner air. Their arcs are clean and unforgiving. Above them, empty space. Beneath them, everything else. The cruise weapons begin to separate, not randomly, but with purpose. Some stay low and direct, following the surface at steady subsonic speed. Others spread outward, pulling radar attention away from the middle of the formation. A third group fades briefly into clutter before returning at slightly shifted bearings. This is not one wave, it is a layered strike timed down to seconds. Inside the Combat Information Center, Aegis does exactly what it was built to do. Tracks are color-coded automatically. Ballistic threats rise to the top of the priority stack. Cruise weapons slot beneath them. The low skimmers, hardest to detect and hardest to stop, are marked for the final defensive layers. No one debates the order, the math already has. On the lead destroyer, vertical launch hatches unlock with a muted mechanical thump. The ship still does not fire. It waits. Engagement windows tighten. Fire control solutions refine themselves as the incoming tracks continue adjusting speed and spacing. At 5:45, the first ballistic track crosses the intercept threshold. "Shooter ready," a voice says, flat and calm. Then, solution verified. There is no dramatic countdown. There never is. The first interceptor erupts from its cell in a flash. The bridge barely notices. It climbs hard, accelerating faster than the threat it is chasing. Seconds later, a second interceptor follows on a slightly different vector, added insurance against debris and countermeasures. On the CIC display, the ballistic track splits, then disappears. No one reacts. The system moves immediately to the next one. Across the formation, other ships join the engagement in sequence rather than all at once. Each interceptor is assigned to a specific threat by a specific firing unit to avoid waste, overlap, and confusion. This is not spraying rounds into the sky. It is precision under pressure. High above, the ballistic threats begin to vanish one by one. But lower down, the more difficult part of the problem is closing fast. The cruise weapons are now inside medium-range engagement space. Their profiles flatten, engines hold steady, guidance systems are locked in. Some begin subtle course changes, not true evasive action, but enough to force constant updates from tracking algorithms. Then the interference spikes again. Not full spectrum jamming, not brute force noise, short directional bursts just enough to create brief uncertainty. On one console, a cruise track ghosts for half a second, then snaps back on a bearing 20 degrees off the last one. On another, two tracks appear to merge, inviting the system to mistake them for clutter or debris. Aegis does not hesitate, it recalculates. ESSM interceptors come online. The first salvo launches from a destroyer on the carrier's port quarter. Paired shots, tightly spaced. They cut low across the sea before rising sharply into their intercept points. Two cruise weapons disappear almost back to back. Fragments fall harmlessly into the water. Another group pushes in from the opposite bearing, tighter and faster, trying to overwhelm one defensive sector. The cruiser steps in, extending the engagement bubble. Radar locks. Fire control transfers smoothly. Interceptors rise to meet the group before it can compress the formation. One inbound breaks apart earlier than expected, farther from the ships than the minimum requirement. That is not luck. That is buffer. That is system margin doing exactly what it exists to do. But the sequence is not over. A handful of cruise tracks deliberately lag behind the main group, staying just outside engagement range and forcing the system to keep resources on them while it deals with the closer danger. They are buying seconds for whatever comes next. Inside CIC, someone notes it quietly. Trailing elements holding back. No one responds. The meaning is obvious. Somewhere in the remaining clutter, something is intended to slip through. At 5:47, the first low-altitude skimmers enter the real danger zone. They are almost invisible now, riding the sea so closely that their returns blur with wave tops. Radar picks them up late. Optical systems catch only flashes of heat. This is where theory ends. This is where distance disappears. The final layers wake up, and the strike group braces for the part no system can fully make comfortable. Because saturation is no longer about numbers now. It is about seconds. At 5:47 local time, the remaining cruise threats drop even lower, slipping beneath optimal radar coverage and skimming the surface at speeds that leave no room for hesitation. Their guidance is fixed. No more weaving, no more feints. They are driving straight in. Inside CIC, engagement rings collapse quickly. Distances that were measured in miles are now measured in moments. The system reprioritizes without drama. Medium range is over. This is the last layered phase. ESSM responds first. Paired launches, tight geometry, no pursuit, only cutoff solutions calculated to meet each target at the exact point where its options disappear. Two more threats are erased in quick succession, breaking apart low over the water. Debris splashes harmlessly into the sea, but not all of them. One track holds. It does not turn, it does not slow, it does not break apart by chance. It keeps coming. The Aegis display flashes amber, not success, not failure, just closeness. The inbound has crossed into a zone where reaction time is no longer generous. On an escort destroyer, the forward close-in weapon system begins to spin. The sound is unmistakable, a rising mechanical whine echoing through steel compartments and across the deck. It is not theatrical, it is not cinematic, it is automatic. Sensors hand over targeting data. The mount slews faster than the eye can follow. The computer confirms the solution. There is no debate, no dramatic final decision. The system opens fire. A controlled burst, less than 2 seconds. The inbound breaks apart in midair, shredded into fragments that fall short of the formation. The detonation is close enough to feel through the hull, but far enough away to leave no damage behind. No one says anything because there is still another track. This one is even lower. Detected later. Less time. The threat rises over the surface horizon at less than 1,500 meters from the carrier. That is dangerously close. Inside CIC, time narrows to individual breaths. No one looks away. No one blinks. The CIWS on a second escort ship comes alive. This burst lasts longer. The air fills with a dense stream of metal. The inbound erupts almost directly ahead of the formation, its payload broken apart before it can do what it was meant to do. Debris tears across the water in a violent spray. The carrier remains untouched, but the silence that follows feels heavier than the noise that came before it. Radar screens begin clearing now. One by one, the remaining tracks disappear, intercepted, broken apart, or erased by defensive layers that never overlapped and never hesitated. At 5:49, the final inbound vanishes. For the first time since the engagement began, there are no red symbols left on the display. No incoming threats, no fresh launches, just open water. Still, no one relaxes. At sea, the most dangerous moment is not always the strike itself. Sometimes it is the pause that comes after. Damage control reports begin arriving in clipped, methodical form. No fires, no flooding, no casualties. Hull integrity confirmed across the formation. The carrier continues on course. It does not slow, it does not turn away. Above, combat air patrol aircraft tighten their orbits, scanning for signs of a follow-on wave. Electronic warfare teams stay active, watching for radar illumination or bursts of communication from shore. Nothing for now. Inside CIC, the watch officer speaks again, quiet and measured. All inbound threats neutralized. No one answers. Not because they missed it, but because everyone knows that statement is only half the story. Neutralized does not mean over. It means survived. The strike group has just absorbed a coordinated multi-vector missile assault without losing a ship. That fact is logged, understood, and immediately put aside, because survival is not the final goal. It is the condition required for whatever comes next. The carrier sails on, steel steady against the water, flight deck secured, systems humming at full readiness. Whatever was supposed to happen here did not happen. And whoever launched those 68 weapons has now learned something important. The shield held. No retreat was forced. No hit was landed. The last inbound died less than a mile from the carrier. That distance, measured in meters and milliseconds, is the difference between deterrence and disaster. This time, the margin held. At 5:50 local time, the radar picture clears fully. Not slowly, instantly. Red tracks vanish one after another until the screen is once again a clean blue field. Open water, neutral contacts, no incoming, no fresh launches, no second wave rising off the coast. That emptiness is not relief. It is tension. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one stands down. Consoles remain hot, sensors stay live. Every system that came alive minutes earlier remains fully engaged, waiting for silence to break. Because this is often the most dangerous phase, after the inbound wave before the response. Damage control updates continue. Hull integrity green across all ships. No fires, no flooding, no injuries. Fragment impacts all outside harmful range. Radar arrays intact. Launch cells intact. The carrier never changed course. On the bridge, the captain studies the surface plot without comment. His posture is unchanged from the first contact, hands resting lightly on the rail, eyes forward. Around him, the ship breathes, steel settling, systems cycling, crews holding their positions. Flight deck status remains locked. Aircraft are still chained down. Catapults cold. No launch order, not yet. Above the formation, combat air patrol aircraft widen their search patterns, extending sensor coverage deeper toward the coastline. Their radios remain disciplined and quiet. Electronic warfare teams watch for signs of life. This is where an opponent sometimes gives something away. A radar sweep held too long, a fire control signal, a burst transmission sent too early. Nothing appears, no emissions, no chatter, no visible movement. The shoreline has gone dark. Inside CIC, analysts begin rebuilding the entire sequence in real time. Launch vectors are triangulated, flight profiles logged, timing gaps measured down to fractions of a second. Every inbound tells a story, where it came from, what it was meant to pressure, which defensive layer it hoped would crack. The story is complete now. What the other side wanted is obvious. What they failed to achieve is even more obvious. Still, no one says it out loud. Doctrine does not reward speeches in the middle of a live situation. It rewards readiness. Rules of engagement tighten quietly. Not announced, not debated, simply understood. The formation adjusts subtly inward. Defensive spacing changes by small amounts. ISR assets retask. Subsurface elements reposition without comment. The message across the group is clear. If anything lights up again, nothing about the next phase will be uncertain. On deck, sailors remain at their stations. Helmets on, gloves tight, eyes on the horizon and the sky. No one eases up, no one checks the clock. They know better. The silence stretches, minutes pass, then more. The sea remains calm, almost offensively ordinary. Sunlight reflects off the surface as though nothing happened, as though 68 inbound tracks were never racing through the air. That contrast is unsettling. At sea, calm after violence is not peace, it is evaluation. The strike group keeps moving, engine steady, formation disciplined. Every mile now is deliberate. Every minute without another launch is information. Inside CIC, a watch officer says quietly, no follow-on indicators. The words are recorded, not celebrated. Somewhere along the coast, someone has realized the plan failed. That realization takes time. Time to confirm, time to process, time to decide whether to escalate or back away. The Navy knows this window well. It is the pause where conflicts either widen or stop. No one on board assumes the second option, so systems stay ready, weapons remain armed, eyes stay open. Silence does not mean the danger is gone. It means the other side is thinking, and a thinking adversary can be more dangerous than a noisy one. The carrier sails on, unhit, unshaken, unimpressed. The incoming wave failed. The shield held. Now comes the part the other side cannot see yet. What follows is no longer about defense, it is about consequence. At 6:02 local time, the carrier strike group does not stop, slow, or turn away from the Gulf. Engines hold steady as the formation continues exactly along the route planned before the first launcher ever fired. From above, there is nothing in its movement that suggests a force that has just absorbed a major coordinated strike. That alone is a message. Inside CIC, the posture shifts. Not visibly, not dramatically, but decisively. Defensive tracking gives way to consequence management. Launch vectors are finalized. Timelines are calculated in reverse. Every failed inbound now points back to its source. ISR assets narrow their focus inland. Sensors that were watching the sky minutes ago are now probing launch corridors, storage areas, and command nodes. Patterns emerge quickly. Nothing about this was improvised. It required planning, coordination, approval, which means accountability can be traced. On the bridge, the captain receives an update. He listens. He nods once. No one barks orders. No speeches are given. The machinery of response is already in motion. Across the formation, readiness quietly increases again. Not announced over the shipwide circuit. Not marked by alarms. Sailors feel it anyway in the way procedures tighten and routines sharpen. Flight deck crews begin moving again. Chains come off. Weapons teams return to work with purpose. Aircraft elevators begin cycling, not chaotically, but in sequence. The air wing does not rush in panic. It prepares with discipline. Each aircraft is loaded according to profiles briefed long before this day. Pilots move with calm efficiency, checking panels, strapping in, sealing helmets. No one asks why, no one needs to. Elsewhere in the formation, vertical launch systems remain closed for now, but targeting data keeps flowing. Coordinates populate cells. Nothing leaves the rails yet. Above, the Combat Air Patrol tightens its orbit, expanding coverage and watching for renewed movement. There is none. The coast remains silent, and that silence is read correctly. This was not symbolic, it was a gamble, and it failed. The carrier continues deeper into the Gulf, steady and deliberate. Every mile forward reinforces the result of the past hour. The strike did not alter the route. It did not buy hesitation. It did not force delay. It achieved nothing. Inside CIC, the final engagement summary is entered into the log. 68 inbound weapons, all neutralized. 0 damage, 0 casualties. Defensive layers performed as designed. The wording is clinical, the meaning is not. Because once a missile leaves the rail, the rules change. That is understood by the strike group. It is also understood by whoever authorized the launch. Somewhere beyond the horizon, that realization is settling in. The shield was tested and it held. The carrier survived. The formation never fractured. And now the clock is no longer counting down toward impact. It is counting toward response. The distinction is small in wording, absolute in reality. At 6:21, the carrier passes a navigational waypoint without deviation. The log records it without emphasis. To an outside observer, it looks routine. To anyone familiar with naval warfare, it is anything but. This is what dominance looks like when it does not need to announce itself. No wreckage on camera, no triumphant soundtrack, no boastful transmissions, just steel moving forward, systems aligned, and decisions already made. The missiles are gone. The silence remains. And somewhere well beyond radar range, someone now understands what 68 inbound weapons could not do. They could not stop the carrier. They could not break the formation. And by failing, they ensured that whatever comes next will not be another test. It will be a consequence. The U.S. Navy does not react to noise alone. It answers intent, and the intent here was unmistakable. The Gulf is still ahead. The carrier keeps sailing.